The third night the wolf came to my door, I stopped pretending I might sleep through it. By then I knew the sound of him, the way you know a clock you have stopped hearing, noticing it only when it stops. He came after the kitchen fires were banked, and the last torch in the servants' corridor burned down to nothing, and he sat in the dark on the other side of my bolted door, and he howled. Not the long, mournful note the bards give wolves, something lower than that, patient. The sound of a creature that had decided waiting was simply the thing it would do now, for as long as it took. I lay on my pallet with my one blanket pulled to my chin, 23 years old and entirely forgotten by everyone who mattered. And I listened to the most feared animal in the Iron Territories grieve at a door with nothing behind it but me. "You have the wrong room," I whispered, the first night I found the nerve. "There's no one here worth all this." He howled again, like he meant to argue.
I should explain the door, because everyone else got it wrong later, and I would rather you had it from me. 2 winters ago, I came to the King's Holdfast as a still-room girl, the lowest rung of the lowest ladder, the one who grinds the bitter root and scalds the linens, and is never, under any circumstances, seen. The healer who took me on was an old woman the house called Halden's widow, and when she died in the spring fever, she took my place on the household rolls down with her, because the new housekeeper counted heads from a list, and my head was not on it. By rights, I should have gone out the gate months back, down the mountain road with a heel of bread and a season's wages I never got. I was supposed to have been sent away. Instead, I stayed, because I had nowhere to be sent to, and because a holdfast that size has a great many rooms no one remembers, and because I had learned, very young, how to be the kind of quiet that looks like absence. I slept in a disused still room off the servants' wing, behind a door that's still bolted from the inside. I rose before the bakers. I did the work no one had assigned me, and left it done where it would be found. And I took bread from a larder I was no longer counted to eat from, and I asked for nothing, and no one asked after me. There is a particular safety in being a draft under a door. People feel you and never once look down. It was a good arrangement. It required only that I never be wanted by anyone, which is, I suppose, where the wolf came in. He first came on a night with no moon. I heard claws in the corridor, unhurried, heavy. The gate of something that did not need to be quiet, because nothing in that house would dare object. And then a great weight settling against the wood, and then breathing, long, deliberate breathing, as though he were learning the room through the gap at the threshold. I did not move. I have a gift for not moving. He stayed until the grey hour before the bakers woke, and then he was gone. And I told myself I had dreamed him, the way you tell yourself anything you cannot afford to be true. The next night, he brought me a glove. I found it at dawn when I unbolted the door to creep out for water. A man's glove, fine black leather, the kind a lord wears to hunt and a king wears to remind people he could. It lay on the threshold, exactly scented, the way a cat leaves a mouse. I stood looking at it a long moment. Then I did the only sensible thing a woman in my position could do, which was to carry it up to the great hall by the back passages and leave it on a bench where some flustered steward would find it and never know it had been anywhere at all. The night after, he brought me the glove's twin, and a heron's feather laid neatly across it. I want to be clear that I understood, even then, that this was a catastrophe. A wolf does not pick a door at random. Every soul in that holdfast knew whose wolf walked the night halls, knew it the way you know which way is down. The king's beast was enormous and grey and silent, and it answered to no one, not even, the kitchen women whispered, entirely to the king himself. And it had chosen,
out of 300 rooms and 400 people, to sit and grieve at the door of a girl who was not on the list. If anyone found out, I would not be sent quietly down the mountain. I would be a story. And stories, for women like me, are how you get a name you cannot outrun. So I did the sensible thing for 11 nights. I took his gifts and returned them to the world before the world could miss them. A glove, a feather, a wax candle end with the royal seal still in it, a strip of gilded harness, a single chess piece carved from black horn, a knight, which I thought showed a sense of humour I had not expected from a wolf. Each dawn I gathered the knight's offering and walked it back to where it belonged, and each night he brought me something new, and somewhere in there I stopped being terrified and started, against every instinct I owned, to look forward to seeing what he thought I needed. On the 12th night, he did not bring a thing. He brought himself, and he howled, and he did not stop. That was the night Gunnar found him. Gunnar was the king's second, a mountain of a man with a soft voice and the unenviable job of explaining the king to everyone else, including, I would come to learn, to the king. He came down the servants' corridor with a torch and a drawn expression, and found the great grey wolf sitting foursquare before my door, like a sentry that had taken root. I knew, because I had my ear to the wood, and my heart going like a trapped bird. "All right," Gunnar said to the wolf, in the tone of a man who has had this argument before and lost it. "All right. Up. Come away. There's nothing here." The wolf looked at him. I could not see it, but I felt the quality of the silence change, the way a room changes when something powerful decides not to move. "There's nothing here." His own conviction was visibly thinning, and the wolf, very deliberately, lay down across my threshold and set its head on its paws. Gunnar was quiet a moment. Then he said, to the door, in a different voice, gentler and far more frightening for it, "Is someone in there?" I have thought since about all the things I might have said. I might have stayed silent and let him believe the room empty. I might have. But I was tired in a way sleep does not fix. And I had spent 2 years being a draft under a door, and some reckless, sunlit part of me I had thought long dead opened my mouth. Only me, and I've been trying to send him home for a fortnight if it helps. The silence on the far side was total. "What's your name?" Gunnar said at last. "Wren." "Wren what?" "Just Wren. I'm not on the list." A long pause. Then, with the weariness of a man who can already see the shape of the catastrophe rolling toward him. "Stay there, Wren. Don't. Just stay there. Don't go anywhere." "I never do." It was the truest thing I had told anyone in 2 years. The king came at dawn. I knew it was him before the door opened, because the wolf rose, and the whole corridor seemed to lean toward the far end of it like grass before weather. Boots. Not hurried. The unhurried step of a man who has never once in his life had to arrive anywhere before he chose to. And then the bolt, which I'd thrown out of habit, 2 years of habit, was looked at. And a voice on the other side, low and even, and not at all what I had braced for, said, "Open the door." Not a request, but not the thing I feared either. There was something underneath it I could not name yet. I would spend a long time learning to name the things that lived underneath what that man said. I opened the door. I had seen Soren of the Iron Territories twice before, both times from the back of a crowd, both times a figure on a dais wearing his crown like it bored him. Up close, in the grey light of a corridor that smelled of tallow and cold stone, he was simply a large, tired man
with winter in his eyes and 3 days of sleeplessness on him. And his enormous wolf had shoved its head into his hand the moment the door opened, the way a hound shows its master the thing it has been trying to say all along. Look, look, her, I told you, her. The king looked at me. I would like to report that I said something clever. I'm told I am, on my good days, clever. What I actually did was stand in the doorway of a room I was not supposed to be alive in a dress I had mended more times than it had threads, and watch the most powerful man in the territory go very still. "Who are you?" he said. "No one, Majesty." I dropped the curtsy 2 years of caution had drilled into me. A mistake on a list. I'll be gone by midday, I swear it. I only stayed because my wolf, he said, has not settled since the night I took back this house. He said it quietly, like a confession he had not meant to make to a stranger in a doorway. 3 years. He walks, he searches, he will not tell me for what. His jaw moved once before he found the next words. And tonight he brought me here, and he will not leave. So I will ask you again, and I would like the truth of it. Who are you? I should have lied. Lying had kept me alive. I'm Wren, I said. I truly am no one, but I think... I looked at the wolf, who was looking at me with an expression no animal should have been able to make, one that was breaking my heart for reasons I did not yet understand. I think your wolf and I may have met before. That should have been the moment everything came clear. It was not, because the world does not allow you clean moments. It allows you courts and councils and Lady Astrid. She arrived in the corridor before the king had finished looking at me, because women like Lady Astrid have a gift for arriving exactly when a thing might otherwise have gone well. She was beautiful in the way of a blade laid on velvet, and she had spent 3 years being the obvious choice for Luna of the Iron Territories. The right blood, the right alliance, the right everything. And she took in the scene in the doorway with one sweep of her clever eyes and understood, faster than the king did, exactly what it meant. Majesty. Her voice was warm and her eyes were not. The whole house is awake with this. The king's own wolf, howling the night long at a servant's door. Her gaze moved over me, slow, cataloguing the mended dress, the bare feet. People will want an explanation. People always do. A pause, delicate as a dropped stitch, especially when they learn there's been a girl hidden away in the servants' wing for months. One does wonder what she's been hidden for, or what she might be hiding. I did not understand the trap yet. The king did not either. He was still watching the wolf. But Gunnar's face changed, and I have since learned to read Gunnar's face like weather, and what crossed it then was the particular dread of a man watching a rumour get itself born. By midday, it was all over the holdfast. The girl in the servants' wing was not a mistake on a list. The girl in the servants' wing had been put there, hidden there, by the king, who visited her by night in the shape of his wolf. Everyone knew a powerful enough alpha could send his wolf where his pride would not let his feet go. And why hide a woman, the holdfast asked itself, delighted and scandalised. Why hide her and feed her in secret and grieve at her door? Because, Lady Astrid did not quite say, and did not at all need to. She is carrying something the king does not want seen. A child. The king's child, got in secret on a nobody, tucked away in a still room until it could be dealt with quietly. I learnt this the way you learn the building is on fire. All at once, from a stranger. Far too late to have done anything differently. A laundress I had never spoken to caught my wrist at the well and hissed that I was either a fool or the bravest woman in the house, and that I had best mind what I ate from now on, for there were those who would not want the king's secret born. I went back to my still room and bolted the door and laughed, once, without any humour in it. carrying the king's child. I had not so much as touched the man's hand. I had spoken to him for the length of one bewildered conversation in a doorway, and already the holdfast had built an entire child out of a wolf's loneliness and a noble woman's ambition, and I was meant to carry it whether it existed or not. The terrible part, the part I am not proud of, is that for one moment, alone in the dark, I let myself wonder what it would be to be wanted that badly by anyone, even wrongly, even as a lie someone else had told for me. Then I heard claws in the corridor, and the great weight settled against my door, and the wolf breathed at the gap in the threshold, and I put my hand flat to the wood, and on the other side I heard him go still, as if he had felt it. "I know you," I told the wood softly. "Don't I?" He did not howl that night. He stayed, and he was quiet, and it was the first quiet I had felt in 2 years that did not feel like hiding. I have to stop here a moment, because what comes next is the part I never told a living soul, the thing the whole holdfast was busy guessing at, and not one of them got right. So before I go on, I would love to know, are you guessing too? When this is done, tell me whether you had worked out what I was hiding, and if you would like the next one of these to find you here in the dark. You could follow along. It costs you nothing, and it keeps me company. There, come closer. Here is the secret. Let me tell you the thing the holdfast never guessed. The thing not even the king knew yet. 3 winters ago, before any of this, I was not at the holdfast at all. I was at a border infirmary at the cold edge of the territory, a low stone house where they sent the dying and the poor, and I was the girl who kept the night fire. It was the worst winter anyone could remember, and one black night, something scratched at the back step. Not a knock, a scratch, and I opened the door against every rule I had, and a wolf fell across the threshold. He was half dead, grey, enormous, starved down to a frame, with a wound along his flank gone bad, and his eyes filmed over with the particular patience of an animal that has decided to die. He should have frightened me to my bones. He did not. He looked at me the way the drowning look at a rope, and I have never in my life been able to walk past the thing that needed me, which is perhaps my only real flaw and my only real virtue. So I kept him. All that winter, in secret, in the woodshed behind the infirmary, I cleaned the wound and fed him what I could steal, and sat with him through the worst of the nights. He let me. A wild wolf the size of a pony let a half-grown girl tend him, and neither of us ever questioned it. I tied a strip of red wool about his throat so I could find him in the snow when he wandered, and I called him Ash, for the colour of him, and for the way he looked like something that had been through a fire and decided not to be finished by it. Then the thaw came, and one morning the woodshed was empty, and the strip of red wool lay coiled on the straw where he had worked it loose, and he was gone. I cried for a week and told no one. Because who would I have told? A nobody had loved a wolf, and the wolf had left. There is no song in that. I never knew. How could I have known that 3 winters ago the rightful heir of the Iron Territories had been driven from his own house in a coup, betrayed and run to ground, and had survived the winter that should have killed him only because someone, somewhere, had kept his wolf alive. The king came again the 3rd evening, alone, without the wolf, which somehow unsettled me more than the wolf ever had. He did not come as a king that time. He came in a plain dark coat with the collar turned up,
like a man trying not to be known in his own house. And he stood in my doorway and looked at me a long moment. And then he set something down on the small table by the door, the way his wolf set down gloves. It was a strip of red wool, frayed, faded nearly to brown, knotted at one end, the way you knot a thing when your fingers are cold and clumsy and 12 years old and frightened. The room tilted. "I have carried this for 3 years," Soren said. His voice was not even anymore. "I do not remember that winter as a man. I remember it the way you remember a fever, in pieces, in heat and cold. But my wolf remembers all of it. He remembers a fire, a backstep, a pair of hands that did not run." He looked at me, and the winter had gone out of his eyes, and something far more dangerous had come into them. Hope, which is the most perilous thing a powerful man can let himself feel. When I took back my throne, I sent men to that infirmary. They told me the girl who kept the night fire had gone, that no one knew her name, that no one had thought to ask it. I have spent 3 years searching for a person I could not describe, to pay a debt I could not name, and my wolf found you in 11 nights. I picked up the red wool. It was the same. Of course it was the same. I had tied that knot. "I called you Ash," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I had any right to expect. "You worked this loose and left it in the straw, and you broke my heart, you know. I was 12. I thought I had done something wrong." The look on his face. "I will not be able to do it justice for you, though I have tried 100 times since." It was the look of a man who has spent 3 years believing he hunted a stranger, and has just discovered he was hunting the one person in the world who ever kept him alive, expecting nothing in return. Grief and joy fused into a single expression his face was not built to hold. The court would have given a great deal to see the Iron King look like that. I am glad they did not. It was mine. After that, the holdfast turned dangerous in earnest. Because here is the thing about a secret that makes a king look like that. Other people can feel its weight, even when they cannot see its shape. Lady Astrid felt it. She had built her whole future on being chosen, and she could see the king turning, slow as a great ship, toward a still-room girl with no name. And she did what people do when the thing they have counted on begins to move. She stopped scheming in whispers and began acting in the open. She came to me herself. That was her mistake, though I did not know it would be then. "You clever little nothing." She said it in my still room, with the door left open behind her so anyone passing would see only a great lady condescending to a servant. "I have worked out what you are. You are not carrying his child. I had a midwife look at you from across the hall. You needn't go so pale. Of course you are not. You are something worse. You are a story he wants to believe. And stories can be ended." She smiled. "There is a wagon leaving at dawn for the southern border. A long road. I have seen to it that your name, the name you do not officially have, is on the manifest. You are never on the list, Wren. It will be the easiest thing in the world to make certain you are never on anything again. No one will even know to look. You will simply be a draft under a door that someone finally thought to close." The awful thing was that she was right about how easy it would be. I had spent 2 years making myself easy to remove. I had built my own safety into a shape that fit her hand exactly. She had me taken that night, not roughly, that would have left marks and questions, but quietly. 2 of her household men and a locked storeroom by the gate, to keep me tidy until the dawn wagon. They took my candle. They bolted the door from the outside, which I found, in the dark, almost funny. 2 years of bolting that door from the inside to keep the world out, and now the world had bolted it to keep me in. I did not waste my breath screaming.
No one comes when a draft calls. So I did the only thing left to me, the thing I had been too careful to do for 2 years. I put my hand flat to the cold wood of the door in the dark, and I thought about a half-dead wolf who had decided not to be finished by the fire, and I said it, not loudly, the way you say a thing you are not sure anyone can hear. Ash, I'm here. I'm here. Come find me. One more time. I do not know how he heard me. Gunnar told me after that the wolf had been pacing the king's chamber all the evening, restless to the edge of menace, and that, a little past midnight, he simply put his head back and howled. Once, and then went through the chamber door before any man could open it for him, and down through the holdfast like grey water finding the sea. What I knew was this. I knew the storeroom went from black to less black as a line of torchlight grew under the door. I knew there was a sound against the wood that was not a knock and not a scratch, but something between, something I had heard once before across a winter. And I was on my feet with my palm to the boards before I had decided to stand. I knew the bolt shrieked out of its bracket as if the bracket had given up, and then the door was open. And there was the wolf, and behind the wolf was half the holdfast in their nightclothes with torches, and behind them came the king at a dead run with no crown on and no coat and murder in the set of his shoulders. And behind him, white-faced, Lady Astrid, who had made the single mistake of being awake to see her wagon loaded and had drawn the whole house behind her like a net she could not now get out of. The wolf put himself between me and all of them. Then he sat, square in the doorway, and leaned the whole grey weight of his head against me, and would not be moved, exactly as he had refused to be moved from my door. And the meaning of it was plain to every soul standing in that corridor, because a wolf cannot lie, and everyone there knew it. He had chosen. In front of the court, in the torchlight, the most feared animal in the Iron Territories had laid his head against the lowest person in the house and dared anyone living to say a word. Lady Astrid said a word. She was brave, I will give her that, the way a falling thing is brave. Majesty, this is exactly what I warned of. She has bewitched your wolf. She hides in your walls. She carries nothing. The king's voice cut the corridor in half. He was not shouting. It was worse than shouting. There is no child. You have made certain of that yourself, my lady, with your midwife and your whispering. So do not stand in my house and pretend otherwise. He came forward into the torchlight, and he did a thing then that I am told no one in the Iron Territories had seen the man do in living memory. In front of his court, in front of the woman who had spent 3 years certain the crown was hers, the king went down, not to one knee in the polished way of a man making a gesture, but down, both knees, on the cold stone of a servant's corridor, level with his wolf. Level with me. This is the woman who kept me alive, he said. And he said it to the whole watching house, not to me. 3 winters passed, when I was nothing, when I'd been driven from this very hall and left to die in the snow as a beast with no name. A girl at a border infirmary opened a door she had been forbidden to open, and she fed me from her own short rations, and she sat with me through the nights. And she tied a red thread at my throat so she would not lose me. She asked nothing. She did not know what I was. She has never once, in all the time since, tried to spend what I owe her. He looked up at me, and the torchlight made a wreck of his face, and he did not care. I have been searching for you since the day I could stand as a man again. I had given you up. I thought you were a fever dream, and you were in my own walls the whole time, making yourself small enough to vanish because the world had taught you that being wanted was a danger.
His jaw moved. It is not. Not here. Not while I am alive to say so. I want to tell you, I answered him with all the dry wit I am supposedly known for. The truth is that I had spent 2 years being a draft under a door, and there is no wit in the world that survives being seen all the way through after that long in the dark. So I did the only honest thing. I came down onto my knees on the cold stone with him, so the king of the Iron Territories would not be kneeling alone in front of his court. And I put my hand on the great grey head between us, on the wolf who had refused for 2 years to take no for an answer, and I said, "You worked the thread loose and left it in the straw. I want you to know I have been cross about that for 11 years." And the king of the Iron Territories laughed, a cracked, astonished sound, like a man who had forgotten he could, and the whole terrified court watched their unsmiling king laugh on his knees on a servant's floor. And that, more than the kneeling, more than the wolf, is the moment the holdfast decided the story was true. Lady Astrid did not get her dawn wagon. She got the Southern Road herself in the end, stripped of her alliance and her ambitions both, escorted to the border by the very men she had meant to send me off with. Gunnar saw to the arrangement personally, and I am told he enjoyed it. She had reached for a draft under a door and found, too late, that it had a name after all, and that the name had teeth. The kiss came later, and I will give it to you the way it happened, which is quietly. It was 3 nights after, on the cliff overlook where the wind comes up off the valley. And he had been talking. He talked, in those first weeks, the way a dam talks once the first stone is out. And he stopped mid-sentence and looked at me as though I were the answer to a question he had been too afraid to ask. When he kissed me, what broke open in me was not heat or hunger. It was the simple, unbearable fact of being chosen out loud, after a lifetime of being chosen by no one. The relief of setting down a weight I had carried so long I had stopped feeling it as weight. I understood in that one moment that I was done hiding. That was all. It was enough. It was everything. We were wed before the next full moon, which the court thought indecently fast, and the wolf thought roughly 2 years overdue. I am writing this from the King's Library, which is now also my library, on a grey morning a year on, while down in the yard my husband is failing, at great length and with tremendous dignity, to teach his enormous, dignified wolf to stop bringing me things. It is not going well for him. This morning alone I have received, laid carefully across my desk, a heron's feather, a black horn knight from the chess set, one extremely confused kitchen cat, and a single glove. The wolf does not understand why the king objects. The wolf got results after all. The wolf, as far as the wolf is concerned, ran this entire campaign single-handed and won it. And frankly, the wolf is not wrong. A letter came last week from the border infirmary. They had finally heard, the way the far edges of a country hear things, that the lost girl who kept their night fire had turned out to be the Luna of the Iron Territories. They did not ask for anything. They only wanted to know if it was true, and whether I remembered them, and whether the old back step was the same one. I wrote back that I remembered all of it, that I had sent funds for a proper hearth and a real healer, and that they should keep the back door open in winter because you never know what the cold will bring to a door that is willing to open. I think about that often, now, in this warm room that is mine. How close I came to being a person no one would ever have looked down to find. How a wolf with no name once decided not to be finished by the fire, and then came back
11 years later, and against every law of sense, to make certain I would not be finished by mine either. So tell me, and I mean it, I will read every one. Did you see it coming? Did you know what I was carrying before I said it? And wherever you are tonight, whatever door you have been keeping bolted from the inside, I hope something patient and stubborn is sitting on the other side of it, refusing to leave. Come find me in the next one. I will leave the light on, after all. You never know what the cold will bring to a door that is willing to open.